Welcome to the English Vault. Today, we enter a mountain in northern Thailand where a soccer team walked into a cave after practice and the rain changed everything. The question is not only how they survived. The question is how so many people from so many places stayed calm long enough to bring them home. At first, it looked like a local emergency. A group was missing. Parents waited. Bikes stood near the cave entrance. Then the water rose, the passages disappeared, and a simple search became a mission against time. Chapter 1. When the cave closed. The boys were members of a youth soccer team. After training, they entered the Tam Luang cave with their young coach. It was meant to be a short visit, the kind of small adventure that feels normal when you are young and full of energy. Outside, the sky had another plan. Monsoon rain began to fall. Water moved through the mountain and filled low passages inside the cave. Paths that had looked open became dangerous. A dry walk became a flooded maze. The group moved deeper, looking for higher ground, trying to stay away from the rising water. By evening, families began to worry. The boys had not come home. Their bicycles and shoes were found near the entrance, and that quiet evidence said more than a shout. They were inside, but no one knew exactly where. The mountain had become a locked door. Rescuers arrived with lights, pumps, maps, and questions. The cave was long, narrow, and complicated. Mud made every step harder. Water turned simple movement into a fight. People outside wanted quick answers, but the cave did not give quick answers. For the families, time did not move normally. Every minute felt heavy. They listened for news, watched the rain, and looked at the dark mouth of the cave. Hope was still alive, but it had to share space with fear. Inside that waiting, small details became powerful. A flashlight meant direction. A dry place meant another chance. A phone call could carry hope from one person to another. In ordinary life, these details feel small. In a crisis, they become the difference between panic and endurance. The first hard truth was simple. Nobody could rush a mountain. If rescuers moved too fast, they could lose more lives. If they moved too slowly, the boys might not have enough air, strength, or time. The rescue had begun, but the cave was already teaching its first lesson. Chapter 2. The world arrives at the entrance. News of the missing team spread beyond the province, then beyond Thailand. Local rescuers, Thai Navy personnel, engineers, doctors, volunteers, and international cave divers began to arrive. The scene outside the mountain became a small city of mud, radios, generators, tents, and waiting. Each group brought a different skill. Some people pumped water. Some studied maps. Some cooked food for volunteers. Some comforted families. Some entered the cave and returned exhausted. The rescue was not one heroic act. It was thousands of small acts, connected by the same purpose. The divers faced a world most people never see. Inside the cave, water was brown and dark. Visibility could fall to almost nothing. Some passages were so tight that a diver had to move slowly, feel the walls, and trust the guideline. Panic would be dangerous. Calm was not a personality trait. Calm was survival. Outside, the families waited through rumors and silence. A rescue operation can look organized from a distance, but inside it is full of uncertainty. People test one idea, then another. They learn from failure. They adjust. They try again. Because stopping is not an option. The weather kept pressing. More rain could arrive. Water levels could rise again. Oxygen inside the chamber could become a problem. The mountain was not only a place, it was an opponent that changed every day, sometimes every hour. The operation also showed how language works under pressure. Short messages mattered. Clear instructions mattered. A confusing word could slow a team down. A calm sentence could steady a family. People from different countries had to turn expertise into simple communication, because the cave did not care about titles or accents. Then came the moment that changed the story. After days of searching, divers found the boys and their coach alive on a muddy ledge deep inside the cave. The video showed thin faces, quiet voices, and a question that carried the weight of the whole world. When could they go out? Chapter 3. Alive, but not safe. Finding them was a miracle, but it was not the end. In some ways, it was the beginning of a harder problem. The boys were alive, but they were far from the entrance. Between them and safety were flooded passages, narrow turns, cold water, darkness, and distance. Food, blankets, medicine, and oxygen support could reach them, but a cave is not a hospital. The ledge gave them a place to wait, not a safe home. The boys still had to manage hunger, cold, weakness, and the emotional weight of not knowing when the next voice would arrive from the dark water. Every trip in and out required skill and risk. The rescue team had to decide whether to wait for the water to drop, teach the boys to dive, or attempt an extraction that sounded almost impossible. Waiting had danger. More rain could trap everyone longer. Moving had danger. Many of the boys could not swim well, and none were trained cave divers. Even experienced adults feared those passages. The route demanded control, breathing, trust, and courage in a place built for fear. This is where the story becomes more than an adventure. It becomes a lesson in decision-making under pressure. A good decision is not always the one that feels safe. Sometimes every option carries risk, and leaders must choose the risk that gives life the best chance. Doctors, divers, officials, and specialists debated the plan. They could not afford pride. They needed honesty. If an idea was weak, it had to be challenged. If a detail was missing, it had to be added. In a crisis, ego is expensive. Clarity saves time. There was also a quiet moral pressure. The rescue team knew the world was watching, but cameras could not make the cave safer. Public attention can create urgency, yet urgency without discipline can become dangerous. The best teams had to protect the mission from noise and keep returning to the facts in front of them. The families had to trust people they barely knew. The boys had to trust voices coming through darkness. The rescuers had to trust training, preparation, and each other. The rescue was no longer only about strength. It was about patience, organized into a plan. Chapter 4. The Impossible Plan. The final plan required careful movement through the flooded cave, one boy at a time. It involved divers, medical supervision, ropes, tanks, timing, and a chain of support teams placed along the route. Nothing about it felt simple. Every meter mattered. Before the first extraction, the team rehearsed details again and again. Who would be where? Which equipment would move first? How to protect each boy? How to respond if something changed? The plan had to be precise, but also flexible, because the cave could still surprise them. This is one reason impossible moments are so powerful. From the outside, people often imagine courage as a sudden feeling. Inside the work, courage looks different. It looks like checklists. It looks like quiet voices. It looks like someone checking a rope twice because a small mistake can become huge. Every rehearsal carried a silent question. What have we missed? That question can feel uncomfortable, but in serious work it is a gift. It protects people from false confidence. It invites one more check, one more adjustment, one more honest conversation before the risk becomes real. The rescuers were not fearless. Fear was present. But fear did not lead. Training led. Communication led. The mission asked people to enter darkness many times, not because darkness was easy, but because the boys were waiting on the other side. Outside, the world watched through headlines and updates, but the real story was not the noise outside. The real story was the discipline inside. In a flooded passage, there was no room for drama. There was only the next breath, the next hand signal, the next careful movement. Every person in the chain had to accept limits. Some could not dive. Some could not enter the cave. Some could only carry equipment, prepare meals, or hold a family member through another long night. But limitation did not mean uselessness. It meant finding the exact place where your help could matter. When the first boys came out alive, hope changed shape. It was no longer only a wish. It became evidence. Still, nobody could celebrate too early. Others remained inside, and the cave demanded the same respect from the first rescue to the last. Chapter 5. One Life at a Time. Before the extraction, the team had to prepare the boys emotionally, not only physically. A rescue plan can be correct on paper and still fail if the human being inside it panics. The team needed trust to travel ahead of the equipment. The extraction took place in stages. Each successful trip gave the team confidence, but it did not remove the danger. A rescue like this is never finished until everyone is out. Between each movement, teams checked equipment, studied conditions, and prepared again. The boys had to travel through a world that would frighten most adults. They moved from the small ledge into water, darkness, and narrow passages. Their safety depended on people they could not fully see, people whose calm hands had to become a bridge back to daylight. For the families, every name mattered. The rescue was not a number. It was a son, a brother, a friend. News that one child was out brought relief, but also another wave of waiting. Joy and fear stood next to each other until the final person left the cave. Volunteers outside continued the invisible work. Food still had to be prepared. Mud still had to be managed. Pumps still had to run. Medical teams still had to be ready. Sometimes history remembers a few faces, but survival often depends on people whose names most of us never learn. The coach also carried a heavy emotional burden. He had tried to keep the boys calm inside the cave. Later, many people spoke about responsibility, forgiveness, and pressure. The human heart always searches for someone to blame, but this story asks for something deeper: understanding under stress. The rescue also required emotional control after each success. Relief can make people relax too soon. The team could not do that. After every boy reached safety, the question returned: what about the next one? That rhythm, relief followed by focus, kept the mission honest until the end. One by one, the boys came out. The rescue moved from fear to relief, from question to answer. When the final members of the group were brought to safety, the mountain that had held the world in suspense finally released its grip. Chapter 6. What the Rescue Teaches. The Thai Cave Rescue became famous because it seemed almost impossible. But its deepest power is quieter. It shows what people can do when the goal is clear, when pride becomes smaller than purpose, and when patience is treated as a form of courage. In many impossible moments, people search for one hero. This rescue gives a better answer. It asks us to notice systems of care, quiet competence, and shared responsibility. The strongest person is sometimes the person who knows exactly when to listen. Nobody saved those boys alone. Divers could not do it without doctors, Doctors could not do it without logistics. Officials could not do it without local knowledge. Families could not endure without support. The rescue was a human chain, and every link mattered. There is another lesson hidden in the rescue. Hope needs structure. Hope alone could not lower the water, map the passages, carry tanks, or guide a child through darkness. But without hope, the structure would have felt empty. The mission needed both. It needed the heart to continue and the system to continue safely. It also reminds us that calm is not passive. Calm is active. Calm studies the map. Calm listens to experts. Calm tells the truth about danger. Calm does not pretend a problem is easy. Calm says, "This is hard, so we must become careful." For people building English through stories, this episode offers words like rescue, oxygen, passage, pressure, trust, volunteer, and decision. But the bigger language is emotional. It is the language of waiting, hoping, choosing, and continuing when the path is not clear. The boys entered the cave as a team. They came out because a much larger team formed around them. The world saw that heroism can be patient, technical, humble, and collective. It does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers through a radio in the dark. The story stayed with people because it carried both fear and tenderness. It showed parents who waited without control, rescuers who acted without guarantees, and children who had to believe that daylight still existed somewhere beyond the water. That mixture is why the rescue feels human, not only dramatic. And maybe that is the final lesson. In impossible moments, people do not need perfect confidence. They need enough trust to take the next careful step. This was another story from the English Vault, and I will see you in the next one.